Hello everybody, it is Dark Khan back with another Strike Force. Sorry that it is so late in the night. I wanted to get this done earlier, except I got wound up in research and I was trying to get my computer in order, in which it was being a slow turtle-ass piece of shit. But finally I got it all set up, and today we are going to be talking very quickly about the new Omnibus bill that Trump had signed. Was at first threatening to veto, I guess, but then he gone ahead and signed it. And we're also going to be talking a lot about guns, about the Washington Post's response to people criticizing shooting survivors and so on and so forth. And we're going to be talking about some gun statistics, like particularly of how often firearms are used in self-defense. And then at the end of this video, we're going to respond to a liberal on gun rights. So that shall be fun. A live video response. So here we go. On to the first issue. Trump signs $1.3 trillion omnibus bill he threatened to veto hours earlier. This from CNS News. It's March 23rd, 2018. I've been saving this for a little while, and so it's a little bit of an old one. This is an old issue that I'm tackling right now, but still, I wanted to get this off my chest. S-Man Speaks is in the chat. He says, nice mustache there. Well, thank you, S-Man. The U.S. just got hit with some tariffs. I saw your video, like only the first few minutes, but I intend to watch the rest of it sometime. Trump is a cucked up chicken fucker. Oh boy, S-Man. Okay, yeah, he flip-flops. He says a flip-flop, and I could not really agree more. I mean, Trump does that a lot, apparently. Okay, so anyway, getting on with the article. It's kind of old, but I still want to get the information on this. After threatening to veto it, President Donald Trump on Friday signed the $1.3 trillion omnibus spending bill, which he had criticized for not addressing DACA or fully funding the border wall. While criticizing the bill for being the second largest ever spending bill, second only to that signed by former President Barack Obama, Trump also praised it for providing a much-needed spending increase for the military, whose readiness was undermined by deep defense cuts during the Obama administration. He said the last administration hollowed out the military's readiness and put America at really grave risks. Now, I think that the military is like not at that ready a position, like it is weaker than it really should be, in my opinion. But I don't think necessarily that requires more funds, but more like reallocated funds. Like we're wasting in some areas, and that needs to be focused in the areas that are not so sufficient. Like we are using old jets, for example, and wasteful crony capitalist military endeavors. Like there's a bay that was set up in I think it was Maine, just for a senator. I think it was, oh man, was it Susan Collins? Man, can't remember who exactly it was, but it was one of the Republicans who was wanting it funded to satisfy her donors. S-Man Speaks says Trump, Mexico will pay for it to wall. Also, Trump doesn't do it. This will end no better than Reagan. Surge of defense spending, but cuts taxes. Okay, JJ Skinner says, sup, Zach. I could go on about Reaganomics, but that's a little bit of a side issue. My highest duty is to keep America safe. Nothing more important. The omnibus bill reverses this dangerous spending as this dangerous defense, as crazy as it's been, as difficult as it's been, as much opposition to the military as we've had from the Democrats, and it has been tremendous, the president said. The president doing that clumsy grammar again. I mean, it wasn't just me stuttering over that paragraph, like literally. It was so immaturely worded. He said the military is for everyone, Republicans and Democrats alike. But Democrats have been opposed to fully funding the military. It's for everybody. But we have tremendous opposition to creating really what will be by far the strongest military that we've ever had. We've had that from the Democrats, Trump said. We're looking to do funding for our final fight in certain areas. As you know, we've gotten just As you know, we've gotten just about 100% of our land back from ISIS. We have troop increases necessary to accomplish what we have to do, the president said. And we have, very importantly, a pay increase for our troops. And this will be actually the largest pay increase for our incredible people in over a decade. It increases total defense spending by more than $60 billion from last year and funds the addition of critically needed ships, planes, helicopters, tanks, and submarines. We have submarines being built, the likes of which there's nothing anywhere in the world like the submarines we build, he said. Okay. Okay. J.J. Skinner says, I'm dealing with an otherkin who hates the First and Second Amendment. Ignore the just. Okay. Cut the military spending by 40% and pay for tax cuts via cutting spending. Via cutting defense spending more than an emo's wrists, says S-Man Speaks. I would have to go deeper into the spending. Like, I don't think it's just as simple as we must cut the military budget. I mean, it might be a little bit more nuanced than just simply cutting it. I mean, it's easy to say that because it's the popular opinion, honestly. But I think that there's a little bit more study to it as to where we can direct funding towards, get it out of the waste and put it into upgrading certain parts of our military. Our military equipment is the best equipment in the world, and one of the things you saw 2 days ago with Saudi Arabia and with other countries, Saudi Arabia, as an example, is buying hundreds of billions of dollars worth of our equipment, and we're getting very fast approvals on that, Trump said. Okay, why are we still having ties with Saudi Arabia? There is another example of Trump being tied with a shill. A shitty country. S-Man Speaks says, cut out the fat of the defense spending. Yeah, I agree. Whatever fat we have, cut it out. He called me a miasmic bigot and a kinphobe. Okay, kinphobe, said JJ Skinner. Oh, JJ, so you fear your own kin? You fear your own family? Because, you know, kin is another fancy word for family members. LOL, JJ Skinner also says at the end of that post. The president explained that the reason why he, phone fell asleep there. The president explained that the reason why he changed his mind about vetoing the bill was a matter of national security. Therefore, as a matter of national security, I've signed this omnibus budget bill. There are a lot of things that I'm unhappy about in this bill. There are a lot of things that we shouldn't have had in this bill, but we were, in a sense, forced. If we want to build our military, we were forced to have. There are some things that we should have in the bill, Trump said. He pledged never to sign another bill like it in the future. Oh, really? Fast forward the clocks a few months, and then he'll be doing this again, probably. JJ Skinner says, no, the other kin bullshit. No. I know what you meant by kin, that you meant other kin, but it was just funny that he called you a kinphobe. It was just stupid. I mean, yeah. Oh, you mean those faggots who say, I am a cat, says S-Man Speaks. What the? Are you talking about furries? Okay. But I say to Congress, I will never sign another bill like this again. I'm not going to do it again. Nobody read it. It's only hours old. Some people don't even know what is in $1.3 trillion. It's the second largest ever. President Obama signed one that was actually larger, which I'm sure he wasn't too happy with either, Trump said. But in this case, it became so big because we need to take care of our military. And because the Democrats who don't believe in that added things that they wanted in order to get their votes. We have to get rid of the filibuster rule. We have to get rid of the filibuster rule and go to 51 votes in the Senate if we're going to have really sustained continued success, he said. You know, the filibuster rule is one of the essential parts about our republic, Mr. President. It is one of the rules to keep the majority in check by the minority. That's the essentials of a republic. Like, I am not for straight democracy, Mr. President. And a whole lot of people who have a very coherent thought on government are against that as well. S-Man Speaks says, read my lips, not gonna sign it. Haha. Yeah. JJ Skinner says, yes, S-Man, those faggots. The president voiced his opposition to the bill not providing protections for deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA, something he said Democrats would not do. DACA recipients have been treated extremely badly by the Democrats. We wanted to include DACA. We wanted to have them in this bill, 800,000 people, and actually it could even be more. And we wanted to include DACA in this bill. The Democrats would not do it. They would not do it, Trump said. Yeah. I cannot remember the exact details of DACA, but it seems like it really screws over whoever falls under that bill. S-Man Speaks says, me and JJ will make America truly capitalist. Can we just end this DACA bullshit? Yeah. I agree. Like, just full on repeal it. In addition to calling for doing away with the filibuster, which is bullshit, Trump also asked Congress to provide him with a line item veto for all spending bills in the future. To prevent the Omnibus situation from ever happening again, I'm calling on Congress to give me a line item veto for all government spending bills, and the Senate must end. They must end the filibuster rule and get down to work. We have to get a lot of great legislation approved, and without the filibuster rule, it will happen just like magic, he said. Oh, I got some news for you, Mr. President, but that's not how republics work. By a slim majority, you get legislation through. I want to address the situation on border security, which I call national defense. I call it stopping drugs from pouring across our border, and I call it illegal immigration. It's all of those things, but national defense is a very important two words, because by having a strong border system, including a wall, we are in a position militarily that is very advantageous, Trump added. End of article. Okay, so on to the next one. S-Man Speak says, it was just a fucking executive order signed by Barack. You didn't build that, Obama. Yeah. And you know, when you go to really think about it, the line, you didn't build that, really sounds like a truly socialist term. Now, I'm not saying that Obama was a full-on socialist, because he obviously wasn't. But that really sounds something along the lines of what Owen McDonald would say, wouldn't it, S-Man? CDC study. This also from CNS News. CDC study. Use of firearms for self-defense is important crime deterrent. And this is an article back in 2013, so I still think that it holds some relevance even to this day, despite it being about 5 years old. Well, it's close to 5. Close enough to 5. Self-defense can be an important crime deterrent, says a new report by the Centers for Disease Control. The $10 million study was commissioned by President Barack Obama as part of 23 executive orders he signed in January. Studies that directly assess the effect of actual defensive uses of guns, i.e. incidents in which a gun was used by the crime victim in the sense of attacking or threatening an offender, have found consistently lower injury rates among gun-using crime victims compared with victims who use other self-protective strategies. The CDC study entitled Priorities for Research to Reduce the Threats of Firearm-Related spending as well. Okay. S-Man Speak says, fuck yeah. I think he's saying that in response to me comparing Barack Obama's "you didn't build that" talking point to some that Owen McDonald would say. S-Man Speak says, the roads and the bridges, you didn't build that. The report, which notes that violent crimes, including homicides specifically, have declined in the past 5 years, also pointed out that some firearm violence results in death, but most does not. In fact, the CDC report said most incidents involving the discharge of firearms do not result in a fatality. Yeah, that's what makes this whole statistical debate over guns seem kind of jaded. Is that how many moments is self-defense used with a gun, but nobody died? Um, and really, the CDC, FBI, all of them, they only really count homicides, self-defense when if somebody actually dies. I mean, by what I've seen, anyways, so far at least. They don't do a good job of keeping track of all the times of when self-defense is used with the gun, but nobody dies. In 2010, incidents in the U.S. involving firearms injured or killed more than 105,000 Americans, of which there were twice as many non-fatal firearm-related injuries, 73,505, than deaths. The White House unveiled a plan in January that included orders to the CDC to conduct research on the causes and prevention of gun violence. According to the White House report, quote, research on gun violence is not advocacy. It is critical public health research that gives all Americans information they need, unquote. And I agree with that. They don't distinguish homicide and self-defense, says S-Man Speaks. Yeah, they don't do a very good job at that, do they? The Institute of Medicine and the National Research Council released the results of their research through the CDC last month. Researchers compiled data from previous studies in order to guide future research on gun violence, noting that almost all national survey estimates indicate that defensive gun uses by victims are at least as common as offensive uses by criminals, with estimates of annual uses ranging from about 500,000 to more than 3 million per year. That's a big number. That is far bigger than the amount of murders, actual gun murders that are done in our country on a yearly basis, which is about 10,000 last I checked. Most felons, so imagine that if we were to completely ban guns, maybe we would see at least 500,000 more deaths or injuries. Oh, God. Oh, I gotta read this comment. S-Man Speaks says, Progressive Voice is an effeminate, degenerate Asian Pillsbury doughboy. God. Well, we'll get down to him in a minute, S-Man. Hold your horses. So how much longer does this article go on? There's where I'm at. And it goes on for a little while. I do not know if I'll read the whole thing just so that I could get on with my night, because I still do have work in the morning. No, I don't want your ads. Most felons report obtaining the majority of their firearms from informal sources, adds the report, while stolen guns account for only a small percentage of guns used by convicted criminals. Researchers also found that the majority of firearm deaths are from suicide, not homicide. Between the years 2000 and 2010, firearm-related suicides significantly outnumbered homicides for all age groups, annually accounting for 61% of the more than 335,600 people who died from firearm-related violence in the United States. I think the over 300,000 number that they're citing here is within a 10-year period, so it's not like a total yearly amount. So had me kind of on edge for a second there. African American males are most affected by firearm-related violence, with 32 per 100,000 deaths. Risk factors and predictors of violence include income inequality, diminished economic opportunities, high levels of family disruption, and low levels of community participation. The report expresses uncertainty about gun control measures, stating that whether gun restrictions reduce firearm-related violence is an unresolved issue, and that there is no evidence that passage of right-to-carry laws decrease or increase violent crime. It also stated that proposed gun turn-in programs are ineffective. So the CDC is saying the same thing that I saw Ben Shapiro say in the wake of the Vegas shooting, saying that there is no correlation for a rise or a decrease either way in gun crime with the more or less gun control that you have. S-Man Speak says, a pure soy boy beta cucked up a self-flagellating cuck. Flagellating, however you pronounce that. Instead, researchers propose gun safety technologies such as external locking devices and biometric systems to reduce firearm-related deaths. I thought it was very telling that this report focused so heavily on futuristic technology that's not been brought to the market in any kind of reliable form that consumers have any interest in. John Fraser, Director of Research and Information at the National Rifle Association, told CNSnews.com. Yeah, I mean, liberals are going to laugh that off, obviously. And moderate gun rights advocates who don't dislike the NRA. Even Frederick Voltaire Bastiat said that in the private chat that he wasn't too fond of the NRA. These smart gun technologies are designed to prevent misuse, to prevent either accidents or crimes committed with stolen guns, Fraser noted. Obviously, it wouldn't have any effect on crimes committed with a gun purchased by the criminal. It obviously wouldn't have any effect on suicides by people who bought the guns themselves. However, it could have a huge burden on self-defense rights of law-abiding people if they're forced to use an unproven technology. The CDC's findings that guns are an effective and often used crime deterrent, and that most firearm incidents are not fatal, could affect the future of gun violence research. Okay, S-Man Speaks is doing more mockery of progressive voice, saying, PV, I have male privilege, tranny hooker. You're male? PV puts his pants down. Tranny says, that's a tiny mole. Oh. Yeah. I don't know. I almost feel like that I should ignore the chat here for a little bit until I actually get down to the response video. I mean, no offense, S-Man, but just when I get through with this. The report establishes guidelines meant only for future taxpayer-funded research, Fraser said. However, the anti-gun researchers out there who want to study and promote gun control are perfectly free to get funded to do that by New York Mayor Bloomberg, or by then Mayor Bloomberg anyways, because now we have de Blasio as the mayor of New York, or by any number of other organizations or foundations. It depends on who's doing the research, Fraser added. I would be very concerned that a lot of the follow-up research that might come from this agenda would be more of what we've seen from the anti-gun public health establishment in the past. Okay, so Fraser, I find it kind of funny that he is like dismissing this study. I mean, he's not outright dismissing it, but he is almost given the implication that he does not really trust this study. And what he's not realizing is that this study is fairly objective and unbiased, honestly. I'm in love with progressive voice, Zach 2018. Fuck you, S-Man. Calls and an email from CNS News to the Brady campaign to prevent gun violence were not returned. According to a National Academy's press release, organizations supporting the CDC study have close ties to Obama. And yet they are still willing to put out these statistics that can be used to defend gun rights. Okay, we're almost done with this article, so I'll finish it. When contacted by CNS News, the Annie E. Casey Foundation issued a statement reaffirming its support for the study, which is in keeping with our work to collaborate with public agencies, nonprofit organizations, policymakers, and community leaders to make a positive impact on the lives of kids, families, and communities. Patrick Corvington, the foundation's former senior associate, was nominated by Obama and confirmed in 2010 as CEO of the Corporation for National and Community Service. Community service. Other supporters include the California Endowment which has been promoting Obamacare, the Joyce Foundation, on whose board of directors Obama served for 8 years prior to his Senate run, and Kaiser Permanente, which contributed over $500,000 to his presidential campaign. Okay, so we're done with that article. Okay. I'm not, should I? Man, fuck it. I'm a masochist. S-Man Speaks says, Riley Dennis's Adam's apple belongs in my mouth. Zach, 2017. Ha, 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 ha. No, that was Google it trying to make stupid accusations. That was what that was. So the next article that I have is something from the Washington Post. Now, we are not taking this in as information. We're taking in this article to use it as a foil to respond to. And it poses the question, can we criticize the Parkland kids? Anybody reading that would right off the bat say, yes, by rights, people have the free speech rights to respond to these Parkland kids. S-Man Speaks says, Zach, the meme that keeps on memeing. Well, thank you, S-Man. But I just found it funny that it would even pose the question. I mean, the Parkland students, I mean, particularly Emma Gonzalez and David Hogg, are willfully entering the political arena on their own behalf. So they are open for response in the political atmosphere, for crying out loud. And if they're going to get snarky or arrogant or smug, I would say by all means get personal with them. If they're going to get personal with other people, I mean, they want to play dirty, get down in the mud with them. Well, not too deep down in the mud, because obviously that would end you up getting drowned in mud with them. S-Man Speaks says, yes, we can. Those kids aren't kids, says S-Man Speaks, answering the question, can we criticize the Parkland kids? David Hogg is a ballless beta male bitch. I couldn't really agree more, S-Man. The Parkland kids are all right. And then again, they aren't. This tension between viewing the victims of an untold trauma as the best available advocates for gun restrictions and viewing them as, well, victims of an untold trauma has forced commentators on both sides of the debate into contortions. When National Review editor Charles C.W. Cook tried to slice through one of those knots in an essay on Tuesday, it did not go well. Cook's piece titled, David Hogg is Fair Game for Critics. Are they gearing up to respond to that? I mean, going off by the title there, I'll say that Cook is right. David Hogg is fair game for critics, damn it. Made an already angry internet angrier. Made an already angry internet angrier still. Cook was cruel. He was heartless. He was attacking a child who was speaking up only because he and his classmates had been attacked already. Okay, I put on the mocking voice, but really, nobody is trying to discredit the horrible experience that they've gone through. But this seriously does not mean that they are invulnerable, or that they shouldn't be touched by criticism, that they should not be responded to on their rhetoric, damn it. Okay. What Cook really argues is this. Many liberals say the Parkland children are the perfect people to explain how to prevent an experience they themselves have had, but that though they're adult enough to helm a mass movement, they're still too childlike for critics to come after them. Cook says liberals can't have it both ways. I wonder how this article is going to respond to that. He has a point. Okay. Good. We agree. End of article. But no, there's more to this. S-Man Speaks says Zach wants to get in red pill black's mud. Oh, good Lord. What did I tell you about? You know the one time that you invited me onto S-Man Live? What did I tell you in my one red pill black rant? You cannot hardly see it because it's in the dark, but okay, now you can see it. I am giving you the middle finger, fucker. S-Man Speaks says, God, I can't stand that little punk. Yep. He is a punk indeed. SJWs can control a jug of Drano. He has a point. The Parkland survivors should be taken seriously and sincerely by those who agree with them and those who disagree alike. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be sincere with them if they are going to get downright nasty and start smearing people just for being for gun rights and owning guns themselves. I mean, it's the same way that I treat Owen McDonald. I would be nice to Owen McDonald, but he repeatedly calls his opposition all the fucking time a bigot of some kind, or says that they're disgusting for believing in capitalism. S-Man Speaks says, I am a cruel fucker. Yes, you are, S-Man. Liberals shouldn't call these children essential to an important debate at one moment and too delicate to engage with the other side at another, just as conservatives shouldn't say the survivors are too innocent to participate and at the same time criticize them as conniving leftists exploiting their friends' deaths for fame or political gain. Okay, I had never ever heard Ben Shapiro say that these kids should not be engaged in politics. Much less Mr. Dapperton. Mr. Dapperton, who has relentlessly been responding to these little pukes and all their sycophants, all their supporting sycophants on gun rights. Okay, I'm probably being too cruel by calling them pukes and calling their supporters sycophants, but you know what? You get my drift. Mr. Dapperton is one who supports another little kid who's younger than David Hogg, by the way, Atomic ANCAP, who is 13. He, more importantly, doesn't believe in that kids should not get involved in politics. And are you going to quote us something from Mr. Cook saying that, he thinks that these kids should not get involved in politics at all? Because if you're going to quote him, then I'll agree with you, National Review. Cook would be a hypocrite. But so far, I'm not seeing you quote him on that. But what Cook and his opponents don't spare the time to articulate is the difference between bashing Hogg's arguments and bashing Hogg himself. Oh, fuck off. If I'm going to point out of how much of a smug, disgusting prick he is, I'm going to say he is a smug, disgusting prick. Fuck off. S-Man Speaks says, Owen is a dirty communist. White supremacists feel bad for his autism. Oh, man. No, they'd probably take advantage of his autism. No one likes ad hominem attacks, at least in principle. Well, then tell Hogg to not be slinging mud himself. But in this case, those attacks are even less constructive and even more callous than usual. Why? Because we're involving later year teenagers right here. I mean, they're actively taking a part in the gun debate here, so how come aren't they fair game? But in this case, those attacks, okay. That's because they're being leveled at a child. Yep, I knew it. Read my mind. I said it, and then the article just said it as right after I had said it. And because that child just saw 17 gunned down at his school. And because of the way the debate over Hogg began with a far-right conspiracy campaign to cast him as a crisis actor, well, he should have kept his numbers straight on how many of his friends or of how many of his relatives' friends died. Okay, I cannot remember what exactly he was quoting, but he kept on, I think it might have been one of his family members' friends, where he was saying 4, 5, or 6. He kept on changing the number on the amount of friends that one of his family's friends died. I would have to find the clip again, but you get the idea. I mean, the guy is like digging himself in a hole when he cannot keep his numbers straight. Go tell David Hogg to shut up and continue to eat Hillary Clinton's wrinkly vag, which has more sand than the Sahara, S-Man Speaks says. S-Man Speaks. goes thug life on David Hogg. For every conservative who has pointed out the inconsistency in Hogg's defending the deputy sheriff who stayed outside the school during the shooting and then excoriating Florida Governor Rick Scott for that officer's failure, there are tens of others who have left substance aside. Instead, they call into question Hogg's motivations. They accuse him of climbing over the dead bodies of his peers. They accuse him of pretending the killed were his peers at all. You know what? I am going to give the benefit of the doubt on that because I'm pretty sure that there are people out there. And S-Man Speaks says in response to me saying S-Man Speaks goes thug off on David Hogg, he says, damn right, motherfucker. It's one thing to say Hogg gets it wrong on guns, or that threatening boycotts of everything and anything isn't the surest route to legislative change. It's another to cry out that Hogg is a liar or an idiot who doesn't deserve a spot on our television screens. And like I said, I haven't heard Ben Shapiro or Mr. Dapperton say that he should not have a voice at all on this issue. Just merely saying that he's being disgusting about his own approach towards this issue and that he's wrong. That is, the substance of his arguments are wrong. No wonder liberals are on alert when reproof comes Hogg's way or the way of his fellow survivors. That reproof is so often tinged with vitriol, not simply for what these kids are saying, but also for who they are. Who they are? What do you mean who they are? What, are you saying that people criticize them just for being shooting survivors? I mean, do all of a sudden conservatives have a record of criticizing little kids just for being shooting survivors, or criticize shooting survivors just for being shooting survivors? S-Man Speaks asks, what do you think of Jocelyn becoming religious? I'm kind of sketchy about that, honestly. I mean, I would have to hear him go into full length about those beliefs. Honestly. I mean, he might really believe it. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have that much of an opinion, but it is rather surprising. I will leave it at that. It's natural to want to protect young people from, It's natural to want to protect young people whom society has failed to protect. And while Cook may be correct that it's inconsistent to inoculate a movement's leader from criticism on the merits, shielding a child from spite and slander is another matter. In a country where everyone is mad all the time and everyone has the tools to put that madness on the internet, we often avoid the challenge of addressing someone's arguments and go after their character instead. Changing that culture might be a big ask in the 21st century, but teenagers who've just been through tragedy seem like a fine place to start. Okay. Correction, this blog post incorrectly stated that 17 of David Hogg's classmates were killed. 17 people at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School were killed, but only 14 were students. This version has been updated. Okay, well, thanks for offering the correction, Washington Post. You are still a rather uncredible news source, but that was very nice of you to do right there. Okay. So... all right. S-Man Speaks says in the chat, as Zach organized a coup against some random Geekistan, he was shocked when he found out that conservatarianism was running rampant among the populace once they were liberated. Yeah. He was their hero after the overthrow of the commie dictatorship. Well, that's quite the fanfic there. I'm being a revolutionary hero. My, how flattering. Brandon Paget is in the chat, says, dude, there's a spider on your wall near the ceiling. What the fuck are you talking about? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to summon some satanic voodoo on my ass, Brandon? Or are you teasing me about my American flag, the way that it is being set? This man speaks says, oh, shit. Okay. So now, on to the main event. So, I'm going to I'm going to screen share the video here that we will be responding to. Okay. Screen share, screen 1, and share. There we go. All right. So originally, spiders on your right. What the fuck? Oh god, you guys. This man speak says, PV is fugly. Okay, I'm going to be honest. Okay, you guys had me there. Made me look. Anyway. Brandon Paget says, get trolled. Ha 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 ha. The dark conservatarian gets trolled by Satanist Brandon Paget. Okay. So anyway, originally I was one to respond to a different video, by our good friend Kyle Uncoolinsky of Secular Talk. I was finally going to respond to that one video that Jocelyn had shared me, where he was given his own take about the Parkland survivors and how they were taking on the issue of gun control debate. But then I saw this little gem right here just last night as I was about to go to sleep. And I actually watched it, and I couldn't help but laugh at over half of it. And so I thought this video is too good to go unresponded. And so I thought I'm going to feature this instead of the Secular Talk video that I mentioned earlier in my live stream and respond to it. But first, we are going to go for a water break because I'm parched. This man speaks, says in the chat, get wrecked, faggot. Yeah, I know. I got wrecked. Fuck you. Dark Con falls for S-Man's jokes. Yeah, I know. I was an April Fool yesterday on April Fool's Day. Brandon Paget says, I will say Blair White's chopped off dick is on your wall. Oh, God. Fuck off. Anyway, enough chit-chat. Let's get down to this. By the way, tell me if you guys can, hear the audio fairly well. And I would try and use OBS for this response video, but I haven't quite mastered it. So anyway, S-Man speaks to nigga, nobody says parched. I do, my nigga. God. Anyway, let's get on with this. Tell me if you guys can hear the video well enough.
Sam Seder did a video about Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro was going after the Parkland shooting survivors, and specifically dedicates a whole part of the time to David Hogg. Now, Sam just absolutely destroys Ben Shapiro here. Check it out, and we'll come back and talk about it.
Destroys Ben Shapiro. I'm going to pull a big Lebowski here and say, yeah, well, that's just your opinion, man. And you know what? He does this all the time, Progressive Voice does. He just makes videos constantly of saying that his own liberal heroes destroys conservatives that he hates on constantly. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I might even do one myself, except it'll be a video of S-Man Speaks destroying Progressive Voice on private property rights and the right to discriminate and deny service. Excuse me. So, Brandon Paget says, War Corps did. What do you mean by War Corps did? Yes. S-Man Speaks says, my nigga higa is not my nigga. Okay. I know, because you don't have them high up connections. S-Man, I can hear this pudgy little Asian Pillsbury Doughboy. Yeah, and Sam Seder is a little bit louder, so he'll come in very clearly. But anyway, let's get on with this.
In his windup of talking about facts that he was going to deliver, he just sort of casually said, just because George Soros was a collaborator during the Nazis doesn't mean that I'm going to take his political opinions.
Okay, he uses the word collaborator. And listen to the clip that he plays. Ben Shapiro does not use the word collaborator. Instead, he uses the word helps regarding George Soros and the Nazis. But as you'll see right here in a bit.
Like George Soros went through the Holocaust, right? He was a guy who ended up having to help the Nazis in order to survive. I can still say that.
Okay, the audio cut out there. I have to rewind it. 1 second.
His political opinions.
Like George Soros went through the Holocaust, right? He was a guy who ended up having to help the Nazis in order to survive. I can still say that I think all of his political perspectives are sheer garbage. And it doesn't mean that I'm criticizing George Soros' experiences in the Holocaust.
Now,
yeah, see, there he uses the word help, but does not necessarily use the word collaborator. Collaborator would be a much stronger word to say that full-on George Soros was like in full-on support of the Nazis, and so he collaborated with them. But to say that he helped, from what I have researched, he, in a very, very small way, did help. But we'll get on that here in a little bit. S-Man Speaks says, PV needs to be sent to North Korea. Oh, God. You racist, S-Man.
I think if you actually lived through the Holocaust, you might have a certain insight into the rise of fascism, to what happens to victims of that fascism, to what can happen to families during that time.
Okay, so he has a little bit of perspective on specifically that fascism. But does that give him great credibility of being a great economist, of being great when it comes to civil liberties, of being great when it comes to immigration and so on and so forth? Now, I do not know the full extent of George Soros's political positions, but just because he has an inside perspective on one issue does not make him this grand expert and means that I have to take in all of his political opinions. I mean, even his beliefs regarding the Nazis back during World War II. It does not make him the grand arbiter of how we are all to think about the Nazis and the Third Reich. Now, I'm not a neo-Nazi, but still, I just have to point that out, that I don't see what is with the, I wouldn't even know what fallacious appeal you would call this. But anyway, let's move on.
But Ben Shapiro wants to straw man that just a little bit more.
You bum. Let me ask you, you Ben Stein lookalike, where was the straw man right there? Because the only position that I heard Ben Shapiro speak is that he is not going to take the positions, the political opinions of one man just because he went through the Holocaust. He was not strawmanning another person's positions, political positions. He was explaining his own political opinions, for crying out loud. And plus, he was saying of how George Soros kind of helped a little bit with the Nazis. Did not say collaborated again. So, if anything, you know what? I wouldn't even call it a straw man. I was about to say, if anything, you are straw manning Mr. Sam Cedar Tree, by saying that Ben Shapiro said that George Soros collaborated, when really he did not say collaborated, but only said helped the Nazis. A little bit of a nuanced difference between helping and full-on collaborating, in my observation of things. S-Man Speaks says, people need to stop being fallacious and get filleted. Well, thank you. Yes, S-Man. Yes. What were, I can't remember. Where's my train of thought? Oh, God. But he was only, and by my research, George Soros, again, did help in a small way with the Nazis. Did not full on collaborate, but he helped in a small way. Like, I'm going to have to, actually, I got this pulled up right now. Let's see if you guys can actually see this. Okay. Oh yeah, you guys can't see this, but here's a video that has been making the waves, and it's a clip about George Soros's alleged collaboration with Nazis. Let's take a look at it and take a look at the evidence of George Soros being a supposed Nazi collaborator.
You're a Hungarian Jew who escaped the Holocaust by posing as a Christian.
Right.
And you watched lots of people get shipped off to the death camps.
Right. I was 14 years old. And I would say that that's when my character was made.
In what way?
That one should think ahead, one should understand and anticipate events, and one is threatened. It was a tremendous threat of evil. I mean, it was a very personal experience of evil.
My understanding is that you went out with this protector of yours who swore that you were his adopted godson.
Yes, yes.
Went out, in fact, and helped in the confiscation of property from the Jews.
That's right.
Okay, did you hear that? The Croft character right there who's interviewed, he said, you helped out with the confiscation of property from the Jews. And Soros said that that's right. Now, that's not evidence that he was a full-on collaborator, that he wore Nazi symbols all over himself, that he donned the Nazi army uniform. But it is evidence that he helped to some certain extent with very small, laborious way. I mean, he certainly did not resist. And the only thing that Ben Shapiro said in that earlier video was helped. Not collaborated, but helped. And so Sam Seder kind of putting words in Ben Shapiro's mouth by saying that Ben Shapiro says that George Soros collaborated with the Nazis, when really he did not say that. But you'll just... Anyway, let's get on with this video right here.
I mean, that sounds like an experience that would send lots of people to the psychiatric couch for many, many years. Was it difficult?
Not at all. Not at all. Maybe as a child, you don't.
All right, look at this guy's attitude about the whole circumstance. I mean, obviously, I'm saying that he is not a full-on collaboration, but just a full-on collaborator. But he's being so passive about what happened back then. I mean, or he's saying that he was passive, at least back when he was 14. And he isn't acting all teary-eyed and glum right now in this interview, looking back on those events. I mean, I don't care if you're like 14 years old. Witnessing the events of family members being separated from you, witnessing people get shipped off to die, or having to steal other people's property. Any regular person would feel empathy and sympathy for the victims of said crimes. But George Soros here, he's explaining that that's not the case with him. I mean, how cold of a man do you have to be? How cold of a little boy, in fact? Well, by Jewish standards, 14 years old is a man. But how cold of an individual do you have to be back then to not feel anything, witnessing all that?
I don't see the connection, but it created no problem at all.
No feeling of guilt.
No.
For example.
No feeling of guilt. No, not at all a feeling of guilt of contributing and stealing people's stuff from them. Oh, God, come on.
Example that I'm Jewish, and here I am watching these people go. I could just as easily be there. I should be there. None of that.
Well, of course, I could be on the other side, or I could be the one from whom the thing is being taken away. But there was no sense that I shouldn't be there, because that was, well, actually, funny way, it's just like in markets, that if I weren't there, of course I wasn't doing it, but somebody else would be taking it away anyhow.
So what? You don't feel the least bit of remorse that it was you ending up being the confiscator of those said goods? Brandon Padgett is in the chat. He's all like, what does this mean? And he's showing like a money sign, a guy's face, a fist bump, and a chicken drum. And he's saying consistently, Heil Hotler or Watler or whatever, Whotler, excuse me, Heil Boobler. What the fuck? Heil Boobler? What is that? The big boob female version of Hitler or something? God. Brandon Paget also says Heil Dark Conservler. Oh god. Do not try and frame me literally as Hitler. I am insulted.
University, whether I was there or not, I was only a spectator. The property was being taken away. So I had no role in taking away that property.
Okay, that's kind of odd. He says right here, and keep in mind that I did watch this clip beforehand, but he says, so I had no role in taking away that property. But he said earlier to the question of, or the statement that the interviewer posed, the interviewer said, you participated in confiscating property of Jews. And George Soros said, that's right. And now he's saying, I had no role in taking away that property. It's kind of a little bit of a self-contradiction there. I mean, maybe his logic is all like, somebody else would have taken it away anyway, so technically I did not take anything away. But man, you're playing mental gymnastics at that point. You literally did have a hand in helping confiscate these things. You just said that a little bit earlier in this interview, man. So anyway.
So I had no sense of guilt.
Okay. Brandon Paget also says that shaved head says something else. So you get the from watching this video, you get the message that this is obviously right wing, and some leftists will say that it's right wing propaganda, and I don't really. Okay, I think that Dinesh D'Souza is all right, me personally, but I can understand if somebody is just going to smear him as a complete and out liar. But right now, I'm not really caring for what Dinesh D'Souza has to say. What I'm caring about in playing that clip is what George Soros himself had to play. The words coming out of the horse's mouth. So that's the evidence for how that George Soros helped the Nazis. He helped to confiscate Jewish property. He wasn't a full-on collaborator. He was not a soldier. He did not don the uniform. He kind of self-contradicts himself there. Either that or he's playing mental gymnastics. So to the claim that he helped Nazis in some form or another, the evidence for that is either, I would say, is very small. In my opinion. Okay. Oh. Brandon Paget is saying that these symbols means S-man beats meat. Okay. I'm just gonna show it very quickly. Those symbols right there that he is showing. Anyway. Let's get on with the rest of this response video. We have about 7 more minutes to go.
And then, to put a little cherry on top of that, he continues the pointing out the lie that is Ben Shapiro.
Okay, you say it's a lie. Provide the evidence. How is it a lie? I mean, yes, granted, Ben Shapiro did not provide versus assertion from Ben Shapiro versus assertion from Sam Seder. There's no evidence being provided by either side, and so the most that this is not a debunkery. It's just a dismissal is all that it is of statements.
96 people die every day from guns in our country, yet most representatives have no public stance.
Okay, pause it for 1 second. Okay, first of all, 96 people die in our country every day. 66 of those people die from suicide. Okay, 2/3 of all the people who are...
Pause it. In other words, 66 people die from shooting themselves, which is in no way contrary to David Hogue's point. But continue.
Okay. Do you not know the reason why people mention of how that 2/3 of gun deaths are from suicide? You know why that people on the right, why pro-gun rights advocates mention that? Because we have the belief, most of us at least, believe that People have the right to take their own life. When it comes to taking life, you're dealing with rights. Obviously, I mean, people generally in the modern Western world believe in the right to life, that nobody has the right to take your life except for yourself. And so when somebody commits suicide, nobody's rights is being violated. The only person who there's no rights being taken away. The person is taking away their own life. Yeah, no rights being taken away. He's only taking away his own life, and he has the right to take his own life. But when somebody goes killing somebody else, goes taking away their life, that's when that rights are being taken away. You're taking away another individual's right to life. Brandon Padgett is all like, he's a cunt. Who are you meaning? Sam Seder, Brandon?
Every day, 66 of those people die from.
Okay. By the way, also I have to mention, FYI, that this isn't really a defense of Ben Shapiro necessarily, because Ben Shapiro's response to David Hogg is flawed. I'm just defending mostly of what Ben Shapiro is stating right here. Brandon Padgett says, if you have a backyard, we can build a pool in it. All seasons pools, we can build a pool in it. What does that have to do with anything, Brandon? Brandon Padgett says, yes, and David. Okay, so he's calling both Sam Seder and David cunts.
Suicide. Okay, 2/3 of all the people who are lumped into the gun violence statistics are suicides. Second of all, the vast majority of people.
Now, here's something I want to explain. When you take a gun and you shoot yourself in the head or you shoot yourself in the mouth, that is a very violent act.
Gee, no duh, no shit, Sherlock. Captain Obvious here. Why the fuck does he even mention that? Everybody knows that's an act of violence, and nobody is even disputing that. Ben Shapiro is not saying suicide is not violence. But people on the right mentioned this whole suicide talking point to say that nobody else's rights are being violated.
That would be gun violence. And in fact,
duh.
If I decide to shoot myself with a gun like this, I'm going to die. If I decide I'm going to kill myself with a scissors or by taking too many pills or whatever, my chances of dying are much less, actually. And a lot of those people go on to actually continue to live their lives, get some help, things turn around.
Okay, so what I'm getting from Sam Seder here is that if you are prevented from getting a gun, that means that you cannot kill yourself. What I'm getting here is kind of the insinuation. Sorry, I'm just checking to see if we're still alive here. What I'm getting here is kind of the insinuation that the reason why we want to take away guns and to prevent suicides is because we know what's better for people. Like, if somebody wants to kill themselves, I mean, they have that right to it. I don't really think that anybody else should. I mean, nobody is condoning suicide here. Don't get me wrong. Suicide is a horrible thing. I mean, just like taking crack, heroin, or meth, especially meth, is a terrible thing. But generally, as libertarians, we believe that people have the right to do that. And also, people think that eating an excess amount of one type of food is terrible because you are killing yourself in all eventuality, and smoking cigarettes as well. But really, libertarians are all about allowing people to do those things. And that kind of goes the same thing with suicide by gun. You have no real right to tell people what is best for them. I mean, to legislate on it. I mean, obviously, if you want to speak to somebody and say why they shouldn't commit suicide, by all means, I would encourage other people to encourage suicide, attempted suicide victims to not commit suicide. Obviously. But that's not the point here. In the ultimate grand scheme of things, the suicidee has a right to take his own life. And so that's why people mention the whole suicide thing, is that when a suicide is committed, nobody is taking away another person's right to life. They're only taking away their own life. Brandon Paget says suicide is badass. Oh, come on, Brandon. Be serious. Ban assault scissors. I want more Japanese girl porn. Oh, God. Should I read all of your messages here, Brandon? I'm lonely at the moment. Yeah. I wonder where S-Man went. And JJ, he obviously got bored fast.
People who are killed with guns in the United States are killed with handguns. The proposals that have been pushed by March for Our Lives students have nothing to do with handguns. They have to do with AR-15s and so-called assault rifles. Okay, so none of this makes any sense on a policy level.
Positive. On a policy level, let's be clear here that we pass laws all the time that are not geared towards solving every single problem in society.
Oh, God.
In fact, we have a whole host of financial laws that don't apply to every single possible financial crime, malfeasance that could be taking place.
No.
Okay, the whole response right here is just falling empty and flat on its face. I mean, especially that bit of response right there. The reason why Ben Shapiro mentions that and why anyone else would say the legislation that gun control advocates are proposing is focusing on rifles is because we assume, at least, that gun control advocates are concerned about gun murder and want to prevent gun murder. I mean, don't you want to go after the bigger contributor of that gun murder statistics? I mean, it only makes sense. If your concern is about gun murders, then it would only make sense that you would attack the bigger contributor of that said statistic. And in this case, that would obviously be handguns. I mean, where the heck is my Jeremy Irons clip when I need it? I mean, please have a sense of proportion, as he said in that interview he had with an anti-smoker. We should focus on mental illness and more police security in schools, Brandon Paget says. I could not agree more. I mean, definitely that. Well, it doesn't have to necessarily be public police. Maybe it can be private security as well, but you get the drift. So anyway, the ridiculous response from Sam Seder right there.
No more. We're going to make this the voting issue. We're going to take this to every election, to every state and every city. We're going to make sure the best people get in our elections to run, not as politicians, but as Americans.
Yeah, Americans who love their gun rights.
Because this is not cutting it.
Yes, I can agree. Establishment politicians are shit. But on the issue of guns, I would say all in all, like there are some nuances that we can argue about that congressmen should obviously take action on, but all in all, I think Republicans are doing fine when it comes to gun legislation. Just my personal opinion. Brandon Paget says he sounds like Hitler. Oh, man. People are even encouraging that David Hogg. Okay, I've seen people in the comment section of Secular Talk videos go talking about of how these people would make great politicians. And just imagine that. David Hogg becoming the next Adolf Hitler or Joseph Stalin or whatever a horrible dictator to take away guns from the citizenry so that he can rule with an iron fist and with no opposition at all.
When people try to suppress your vote, and there are people who stand against you because you're too young, we say no more.
Yeah, he goes bringing up the age thing again. I mean, if people out there are saying you should not speak because you're too young, they are idiots. I'm just going to put that out as a blanket rule. Well, they're definitely authoritarian. I mean, idiots might not be quite the right word, but they are definitely being pretty authoritarian at that moment. But as far as I know, Ben Shapiro, Mr. Dapperton, are a couple of people in particular who have not been saying, oh, young kids should not speak at all on these big grown-up decisions. so on and so forth.
When politicians say that your voice doesn't matter because the NRA owns them, we...
Are you talking about the politicians? I don't know. I mean, I'm going to assume that he's talking about the politicians. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Go on.
Say no more.
Okay, so we can stop it there. I don't need to listen to the rest of this. Okay, so first of all, the yelling and the screaming. I know there are a lot of young kids who think that when they do this, that this is...
Okay, see, they're laughing there in the background. I mean, do you listen to every single word that Ben Shapiro is saying yourself? Sam Seder, Michael Brooks, and the rest of the Majority Report crew? Does every person who is like responding to Ben Shapiro listen to every single word that Ben Shapiro is saying in a speech? Like, seriously, there are going to be small segments that you are going to obviously want to respond to. And he laughs at, and they all laugh at Ben Shapiro saying, I don't need to listen to the rest of this. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm nitpicking here, but I'm just going to move on. Brandon Paget says, guns are fun. Yeah, they can be, but they're also dangerous. I mean, let's just put that, let's just throw that out there too.
Is actually just showing passion on the podium. It doesn't. It's not convincing. It doesn't make people like you. It doesn't make people rally behind you.
Okay, I disagree with Ben right there. I mean, obviously, it does show passion. These kids are showing a bunch of passion. I would say misplaced passion, but nonetheless passion. Brandon Paget says, I'm going to bed when the stream ends. Okay, then. We're going to try to wrap it up here very quickly and say like the next 10 minutes or something like that. But yeah, I disagree with Ben. They were showing a lot of passion. But on the flip side, I agree with him on the idea that this does not convince anybody. David Hogg is not saying anything new in the gun debate, really. At least in that particular speech that I just heard from this video.
That was a speech coach. Let me just point out what's going on here. Ben Shapiro, who is sort of looking into camera, and not quite centered in camera, just looking like this, is giving tips on how to excite people.
Yeah, I'm going to give that to you. I mean, it does take points away from your own charisma if you don't look directly into the camera that you're trying to speak to people. Although, on the other hand, Ben Shapiro did say that he is not really used to this constant switching cameras before in one of his older episodes. So, I don't know.
The amount of shit that was debunked there was just...
Debunked. Okay, this is the thing with Progressive Voice. So put in titles for his videos that are like borderline clickbait, like Ben Shapiro debunked and so on and so forth, when he provides little to no sources to counter of what is being said by Ben Shapiro. And he is just sucking, man. He's just brown-nosing Sam Seder right now as he is saying that he debunked Ben Shapiro right there. He did not debunk shit. What? He debunked him on the whole George Soros helped the Nazis just by saying that Ben Shapiro is a liar. Apparently that's all that you have to say now in order to debunk somebody is just say they're a liar. Well, guess what? David Hogg is a liar. Oh, David Hogg debunked. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense just to simply say this person is a liar, therefore he's debunked. There was no sources at all provided by Sam Seder there. The two main points that was mentioned by him, the whole George Soros thing, which he did not provide sources for, or any inside information or detailed information about the story behind George Soros and his Holocaust days. He did not provide any information or sources on that. And he did a failed response to the whole 2/3 of gun deaths are suicide thing, when really he just shows, he does not debunk anything there. All he does is just show a lack of understanding of the logic of why people on the right say that 2/3 of gun deaths are suicide. And Progressive Voice is going to express that same misunderstanding himself. Brandon Paget says, with one or two, I get used to the room. Okay. Brandon Paget also says, we go slow when we first make our moves. By 5 or 6, bring you out to the car. What the fuck are you talking about, Brandon?
Absolutely massive. So, of course, the lie about George Soros was also a big...
Oh, are you going to provide your own sources? Here, let's just see if there is like any sources at all provided by Progressive Voice. Note, by the way, I don't hardly see at all sources provided. Okay, Ben Shapiro flips out over David Hogg's speech. I mean, I think that's the video by Sam Seder that he is providing a link to. But aside from that, he's just providing links for his social medias and whatnot. Become a member, donate on PayPal, follow the Progressive Voice on Twitter, follow the Progressive Voice on Instagram, subscribe to the Progressive Voice, donate on Streamlabs, buy an official Progressive Voice mug, follow me on Twitch for daily live streams, follow me on VidMe, like my new Facebook page, listen to the Progressive Voice podcast on iTunes, listen to the Progressive Voice podcast on Spreaker. Never heard of that website, but whatever. Yeah, nothing but links to his donation sites and his social medias. No sources at all provided. This is ridiculous. Okay, Brandon Paget is going on again with his numbered chants.
Thing that's, while it has nothing to do with the subject, it has to do with the fact that he's outright lying to try to...
Okay, let me tell you, let me explain to you of why it is somewhat relevant to the subject. It's relevant to the subject because people go pointing out of how the Parkland survivors, of how the Parkland It is relevant to the subject of how people point out of how the Parkland survivors have extra credibility on the issue of guns and how people should heed their opinions. Definitely. More so than other people because they survived an actual mass shooting. When really, Ben Shapiro was bringing up an analogy to say as why that is fallacious. To say that on the other hand, despite of how George Soros was in the Holocaust, that does not make his opinions extra valid over everyone else's.
To prove his point.
And again, not a lie. As we just said earlier, George Soros did help the Nazis to a small extent in confiscating the property of Jews during the Holocaust, posing as a well, not really a Nazi sympathizer, but as a small little helper for some godfather. I think it was like his godfather or something like that.
And this is a common lie that has been, played by people like Dinesh D'Souza. Okay,
I will grant to you that some people really do over-exaggerate the whole thing about George Soros and his supposed collaboration, because it's not like a full-on collaboration of where George Soros was helping the Nazis line up Jews to have them in front of a firing squad. All he was doing was helping to a small extent of confiscating property. Again, Jocelyn is in the chat, says, I guess he didn't provide sources that can be manipulated with any stat. I'm in a negative mood, sorry. Is that what you're trying to say, Jocelyn? He says, I'm in negative mode, sorry. A bit of a typo there, Jocelyn. Anyway, continuing on.
Where they probably get all their talking points. Now, one of the main talking points for gun, when it comes to the issue of guns, is that a big chunk of the gun, deaths are from suicides.
Yeah, the reason why we say that is because we believe that people who commit suicide have a right to kill themselves. And when it comes to the issue of rights and the right to life, you are not invading somebody else's rights by taking your own life. But when you kill someone else, you are invading second or third party's rights. That's why we say that suicide is obviously a big, important issue, and it should be discouraged as much as possible. But in the legality of things, in the ultimate philosophy of things, it really is their right. This is my belief, and the belief of many other gun rights advocates.
But, you know, and it was really funny because I don't know if you guys know who Charlie Kirk is. He's like this weird guy who's like a Trump guy. I don't know, he's a MAGA dude or something, but he's obviously a substance. But he had put this out.
I'm just going to take your word on that.
Basically got destroyed by so many people.
Yeah, right. I would really love to see screen caps of this Charlie Kirk dude getting destroyed by these liberals on Twitter like you pose. Until then, I'm just going to dismiss your words there as a load of shit. And even then, it's still probably just going to be mostly just your own opinion. Progressive voice.
Because it's an embarrassing argument. The argument of saying that, yeah, a bunch of these deaths are from suicide.
You don't understand the argument.
Suicides. So that means that we shouldn't do anything about gun control. No.
No. I mean, we don't say that that is the end all be all of the gun, the whole gun issue of why we aren't under the pretense that if we just point out this one factoid of how 2/3 are suicides, therefore we shouldn't do anything on guns, that's the end of the subject. But we just use that as part of our argument, for crying out loud. Justman says, no sources, Brandon Padgett must go in or they don't exist. Okay.
That is a stupid idea. I had actually read a tweet from somebody who said that, you know, I'm glad that it was so difficult for me to get access to a gun or, you know, get a gun because I was mentally unstable and I, you know, might be in the future. And that helps me stay alive because if I don't have access to it, I can't kill myself.
Well, good thing that he did not kill himself in the ultimatum of things. But really, I mean, what's government going to do? Does government know better than the people? Does the government know better than the people when it comes of what the people should do with their own lives? I mean, that's the question that I pose regarding suicide. So therefore, the government should not let them have guns.
And that's the thing. A lot of people who do commit suicide, if you have these kinds of things where it makes it more difficult to get it, it's going to do two things, right? Some people are just going to get prevented 100%. Some people, they'll...
Prevented 100%. That does not really make sense. I mean, it's not 100%. Oh, God. They're probably going to... They're going to go for other methods. So when it comes to suicide, they aren't going to be prevented 100% from committing suicide. They can always take like a knife and slit their own throat or stab themselves real hard in the head or hang themselves with a rope. So it's not 100%.
They'll be able to live their lives longer. So, you know, and obviously the first group also lived their lives longer. So that's like just this kind of very stupid point that is made by conservatives.
Nah, it's not stupid. It's just that you don't understand a lick of it. I wonder, has Progressive Voice ever even talked to a conservative or libertarian when it comes to gun rights? I am really, really starting to doubt this right now. Really am.
Conservatives there, but and then obviously Ben Shapiro trying to explain how, you know, when he says that the shouting or the chanting, it's not really shouting, but the chanting that they're doing.
It is shouting, but you know, arguing about semantics there.
I thought that it was pretty powerful, and I don't think Ben Shapiro is good at kind of rallying, or I don't know if he has any experience with rallying of any sort, or
the motherfucker, the guy has had dozens, if not hundreds, of speeches in front of entire colleges, just flocking in all these conservatives and libertarians and even liberals to watch his speeches. And he has hundreds of thousands of more subscribers than definitely you, and a few more than Kyle Kulinski of Secular Talk. So it may not technically be rallying, but I think he knows how to gather people up to a cause, sir.
Kind of being in an event like that and trying to rally up a crowd, but Ben Shapiro's kind of been like going after these kids, of course, because
everybody has been, or everybody on the right has been going after these kids. So it's nothing unique with Ben Shapiro responding to the kids on their substance and responding of how their attitude is misplaced.
Because they're now,
or not how it's misplaced, but how their attitude is their snarkiness and arrogance is uncalled for.
Advocating for certain gun control measures, and Ben Shapiro is against most of them except for, he claims, background check.
No shit, dude. If somebody is going to be talking about politics, they are going to get responded to. What's the fucking point right there that you're saying?
So, and then, another thing, by the way, is when people say that handguns are most deaths, that is irrelevant to the point of wanting to ban assault weapons, because
excuse me, is your concern with banning assault weapons and assault rifles just because you don't like them? Or is the point of this whole gun control debate so that you can prevent more gun murders? Because if you're concerned with gun murders, then wouldn't you want to focus on the one thing in this country that is contributing most to gun murders? I mean, obviously, I'm not for outright banning handguns, but still. Mr. Insanity is in the chat saying, LOL. Yeah, I guess that is a pretty cringy face right there that I just paused progressive voice on. Anyway, I mean, again, if your focus and concern is with gun murders and gun violence in general, then obviously it only makes sense that you focus on the biggest contributor to them and not the smaller contributor of them, that being assault rifles, which assault rifles are already banned, by the way. But you get my drift.
Because when you can't, when you're trying to solve a complex issue like gun deaths, you can do things that are going to affect certain things. If you are to ban assault weapons or full automatic weapons, assault rifles, you will then.
I have news for you. Fully okay. He did say fully automatic rifles, right? I think I heard him right, but let's just.
If you are to ban assault weapons or full automatic weapons, assault rifles, you will then do two things. You will lower the severity of.
Okay, but sorry, Brian.
Things that are going to affect certain things. If you are to ban assault weapons or full automatic weapons, assault rifles, you will then do two things. You will lower the severity of mass shooting.
Okay, I have news for you. Assault rifles are already banned. Full auto rifles have already been banned back in the 1980s. I provided sources back with my Markiplier response video. My response video to Markiplier on gun control, and I stated the specific sources that state that assault rifles have already been banned. So, and I might provide links to those said same sources in this live stream in post, but who knows? They have been banned, progressive voice. So you're being silly right now.
Shootings, and you will lower the amount of mass shootings. And
okay, he said lower the severity. Lower the severity and lower the number of mass shootings. The thing with mass shootings is that in comparison to the total amount of gun murders that are contributed by handguns, the total amount of gun murders contributed by mass shootings, in general, is dwarfed by the number of gun murders committed with handguns. I mean, it's only like, what, a few hundred deaths per year contributed by a mass shooting or by mass shootings per year in the U.S., whereas violence with handguns is like over 10,000, something like that. I mean, I'm only citing the numbers right off the top of my head.
And that is the goal of it. So if we pass that.
So the goal is to be focusing on the one gun that contributes only a small percentage of the gun murder. That's the goal. I mean, you don't seem to have your priorities straight, just in my opinion. And that cringy face, though.
and we get that through, then that will help with the situation. So that's the whole point. So just saying, you know, most deaths are by handguns. So the fuck what? So the fuck what?
So the fuck what? Don't you want to focus on the bigger contributor to gun murders? That's so the fuck what, you asshole.
There are also other regulations that are going to be put in place that are aimed to lower those. But if we're trying to attack the problem of assault weapon deaths, then why is that a problem? Are you just going to mention?
Okay, the thing with an assault weapon death and a handgun death is if the person ends up dying in the ultimatum of things, well, then the end result is no different from each other. They die. End of story. I can't remember the point that I was going to go on there, but let's continue.
Handguns always, it makes no sense. So
no, it makes perfect sense for us to point out of how you're not getting your priorities straight and how you're not focusing on the bigger contributor of gun murders. I mean, again, I am not advocating for regulating and ultimately banning, much less banning handguns from the United States. But I'm just saying, and many other gun rights advocates are just saying that it doesn't make much sense with these gun control advocates.
Sam absolutely stomped Ben Shapiro here.
Yeah, well, that's just like, you know, your opinion, man. Anyway, Progressive Voice, yet another suck up of a freaking destruction video. The camera is gonna come on any moment now. And so, there we go. Progressive Voice. Again, another silly individual who conflates the issue, who conflates a response to be an utter debunking. Conflates a response to be an utter debunking of a person on the right when really it's not a debunking. You know why it's not a debunking? Because no sources, no numbers, no facts were cited. The only thing that was offered was assertions and opinions from Sam Seder's response to Ben Shapiro. I mean, with Ben Shapiro, yes, granted, there was a whole lot of assertions more there. But when you respond to assertions with just more assertions and just opinions, then a good portion of the time, I'm not going to say all the time, but a good portion of the time, it's not a debunking. It's not a complete and out debunking. It's just a dismissal. That's the most it is. When you counter assertions with more assertions, nothing is debunked, but everything is dismissed. Not all the time, but a good portion of the time. And certainly in this case with this response video from the Progressive Voice. Both he and Sam Seder were not citing any facts, stats, or sources. And so for somebody to say that Ben Shapiro was utterly debunked is silly. Anyway, I'm rambling on a little bit too long, and Mr. Insanity is all like, quit. Yeah, I will quit here in a moment, Mr. Insanity. Sorry about that. Anyway. I'm going to be doing more more of these response videos via live stream, particularly to Progressive Voice, so stay tuned for that, definitely. And I will still be responding to Kyle Kalinske on his take of the whole Parkland shooting and the Parkland survivors and their passion for gun control. Stay tuned for that, but for right now, I'm Zach, the Dark Conservatarian. This has been Strike Force, and y'all have a good night.